If you think about it, each one of us in our lifetime will use maximum of 100 apps. All of us end up using majority of these consumer applications, pure internet applications that have not been created here. If TikTok created what's called the personalized feed, what we are going for is what is called the personal internet.
I just want to set the context. He's an entrepreneur whom I really respect. If the word unicorn in India came and someone who got it and held it with great pride for all of us, it is InMobi. It is a company, it is a startup from India which went to the world and in a space which was actually dominated by Americans and Chinese. And InMobi went, conquered, established, and not just that. When we talk about consumer internet and consumer tech, still we say ki Amazon hai, Google hai, Microsoft hai, and all these kind of companies, not Microsoft, but we talk about them, Meta. But with Glance, his second unicorn, he's got millions, and I will hear how many millions of people in India and hopefully operating outside. He's conquered that. And he, to me, is a role model who stayed in the playground, who's led and batted from the front, and actually made us as an ecosystem, us as a country proud. And today I'm so excited to be talking to you, Naveen. But my first question to you is that why don't we see you, as out there as I see all the poster boys of the Indian startup ecosystem? Why are you not like out there talking, branding, and being more visible?
बुला ही नहीं रही हो. No, nothing like that. It's just, it's been working.
Yeah.
That's it.
The rest are not.
That's a controversial question. I think it's useful to be out there, which we would be going.
Yeah.
So thank you for inviting. We're very excited to be. You have grown this event quite significantly in the last few years. So congratulations on what you have done.
Thank you.
Seems like an amazing crowd. It's packed in the morning in Bangalore. That's a very hard thing to do. So congratulations.
No, they've come to listen to you. And like generally to get a, size of the audience, because yesterday, mostly they were entrepreneurs. How many of you are entrepreneurs yourselves here?
Wow.
Wow. That's significant.
That's the future of India, whether, huh?
Yes.
That's what we are all about.
Yes. So Naveen, I want you to tell us about what's happening with InMobi right now. And if you can talk about Glance.
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, thank you for inviting. As I said earlier, look, InMobi has transitioned itself from being only a B2B company. That's how we started in the advertising space. But we leveraged the advertising might that we had across the globe to create a consumer platform called Glance also. So therefore, we are now known as a consumer tech platform. In Glance, we now have about 400 million consumers across the world that use Glance, which is effectively our take on how phones should change in the world. We are all using the existing app ecosystem that has existed for 1.5 decades. It's archaic and it should go through a change, especially with artificial intelligence. Instead of us seeking content by going into the apps, the content should come to us from the internet using artificial intelligence. It should get streamed onto us directly. If you think about it, each one of us in our lifetime will use maximum of 100 apps. Don't mistake this by downloading how many apps you download. But the number of apps you would use is only 100. And that's not enough. I think there are millions of apps out there. There is an amazing amount of content that exists out there that people are not able to get access to because the architecture is very constraining architecture of your phones today. And therefore, the only way to unconstrain it is to essentially say, how can the surfaces of the phone stream content directly to you? And that is what the phones would start to do. That's what Glance's mission is, to essentially make every phone far more useful in the world and change the way consumers use the phone.
Naveen, this 400 million users is a huge number, because when we talk about these kind of millions, then we talk about Meta, Facebook, or WhatsApp, or ye sab. Today, you as a, I don't know if I can call you a startup, but a new economy, new age business has managed to build that kind of real user base. You were a B2B and InMobi is B2B. To build a glance which is B2C, amidst also the skepticism ki itna scale nahi ho paega. You take us through that journey. What does it mean to one transition from a B2B to a B2C and B2C with this kind of scale?
Yeah, look, I think in the world, it is always very hard if you're a B2B company to say, well, actually, if you're whatever be your company, if you try to evolve the company from that, the biggest hindrance is not external, is internal. Because the DNA of the company is built on certain dimensionality. I think in the last 7 years or so, as we decided to build a consumer platform on top of our enterprise platform, we went through a DNA change. And I think that's not an easy one to go through because we now have a muscle for B2C, very, very strong muscle for B2C. That DNA change requires the leadership to essentially say, we are going to bet on something and you stay at it. I think there are examples of companies having done that, but not that many. So we are very proud of making that big transition. Now you can aim for something newer, but how do you know it'll become bigger? That's not in your hand actually. That effectively is to say, look, we work off a platform that we already are on, which is our InMobi's ad platform is a very big business for us. So therefore, going for something small was not necessarily what we wanted to do. So we went for something really big. If you think about the biggest consumer platforms in the world, on the planet, they are all the ones that have innovated into something. They're not ones that have copied something. You take YouTube. It was unique in the time at which it came. You take Twitter, you take Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc. All of them have built something very fundamentally unique. They did not necessarily try and create a Me Too platform. So therefore, the skepticism around Glance has existed because we were trying to do something completely new on top of an existing phone framework. When you try to do something on an existing phone framework, it has more reasons to not succeed and less reasons to succeed because you're trying something completely unique in few dimensions. I think we have been able to pull that off to a great extent because we stayed very true to just being at it despite a lot of failures and a lot of, I wouldn't call it misstarts, but hard starts. And today we think with Glance, we have a platform where the phone surfaces would go through a change because of Glance in the world. We can clearly see a sign, a pathway to get to 1 billion consumers. There has not been a single platform out of India that has reached 1 billion consumers across the globe. I think we will get there. And that will be the first of its kind that we would build. And that's why, when you try to get to 1 billion users, you have to build a platform that's acceptable globally. We feel we have a platform that is now getting accepted globally. So we've launched not just in India, but in Brazil, in Indonesia, in Japan, and in the US. Japan and US are early days, but we think we will get to the 1 billion user mark.
I was just thinking that as Indians, again yesterday we had the ISRO chairman and we were just feeling so proud about what we're achieving. I'm saying as an Indian consumer tech internet, being at 400 million and aiming for 1 billion is possible, and you're making that possible. And मुझे लगता है कि सुबह उठ जाते हैं और एक ताली बजाते हैं जोरदार, because that's happening here in India, right? It's not an American company coming and saying that, listen, we are going to get users in India.
It's very tiring, by the way. Just continue to see all of us end up using majority of these consumer applications, pure internet applications that have not been created here.
Yeah.
It's just very, very painful to see it. I think we've got to make that attempt to make it happen from India to the globe. I think our time has arrived.
And my question is on Glance, is in terms of, with this 400 million users, the kind of data that you would be generating would be crazy. And you alluded to TikTok, and one of the things that with ByteDance, the biggest story, value creation was that the tech and the intelligence and the AI that they use, no other platform in the world has that kind of capability. So how are you looking at that when it comes to Glance?
Let me draw an analogy from the TikTok world, right? So the biggest success of TikTok was the fact that they leveraged artificial intelligence ahead of everybody else. And therefore, the algorithms they created were absolutely phenomenal. Many other platforms came and leveraged this similar level of algorithms, and they've done decently well. But the advantage of the first company to do it is visible to all of us. We also took a similar technology bet where we said, hey, instead of only using AI, we should actually move and make a big bet on generative AI. What does that mean? It's a big bet that we have made to say the future of the world is not about retrieval of the internet. The way we use internet for the last 20 plus years is that we retrieve internet. We type in and it hits a server and gets the content from the server for us. That's a retrieval of the internet. We think the future of the world is generation of the internet real time. What does that mean? The internet should get generated for you and me differently in the real time. And therefore, what Glance is betting on is to say, if you, instead of only getting content from all the apps out there, it should also generate the internet for you in the real time so that you can experience the content in the way that you need to do. So therefore, if TikTok created what's called the personalized feed, what we are going for is what is called the personal internet. So I think the world is going to move from the personalized internet to a personal internet. But for that, for every one of us, the success of the future would be that if there is a model that is trained on us, and there will be a model that will be trained on each one of us, and we would train that model. Hopefully, we would also have control on that model. And that's what Glance is attempting to do, is to say, hey, let us try and figure out, is there a model out there that is trained on each one of you and creates a personal internet for you on the surfaces of the phone as against going inside the phone. So our attempt is pretty magnanimous and large. We'll see whether we can succeed or to what level we can succeed in it.
No, we are all rooting that you succeed so that next 10 years, we still don't have to say Meta, Google and everything. And when we go all over the world, then we talk about Glance. And it's one of the things required, and this I'm talking on behalf of all the entrepreneurs, to build this kind of scale is a lot of capital to get the best engineers. And you known InMobi has been known for building very high quality team and getting very high quality people. All this requires capital also. How do you look at, capital that would be required to reach this kind of scale, 1 billion users?
I would put it in two parts. I think one is there is capital required. So we've raised about, little shy of $500 million still now on Glance.
Like little shy of $500 million you have raised? Okay, fine.
But I think more important than that, I think we've raised a lot of money in the last 15 years, right? I've raised close to about $1 billion. So I would say one thing about raising capital, there are two sources of capital one can get to. One is, of course, the venture capitalists and the private equity guys. Other is the strategic guys. I've genuinely found that the strategic guys are significantly more useful, advantageous, and the money is far more powerful if you get it from them. So close to about 80% of the capital, maybe 90% of the capital that we have raised for us comes from strategic partners going for, and they help us build businesses versus only ask irrelevant questions in board meetings.
I also want to, yesterday we had a very good session with the leadership team and the founders of PhonePe in terms of building high quality team. And I really respect you. One has to walk in. I thought InMobi had first in the country, at least for me, in the startup space, first office. How many of you been to InMobi office? Then maybe on behalf of Naveen, I'll invite that all of you should go. Because I went in, many, many years back, and I thought that, oh my God, an office like Silicon Valley, people very driven, everyone is like a leader, kind of a real change culture you established very early on. And that's what you've done with Glance. You tell us how, because, and especially when a company is built by a founder, I think that growth you've done in a fantastic way. Take us through.
One of the big things that have worked for us is that our people stay with us for a very long period of time. So, for example, about a third of the company has spent over, I want to say about 7 years with us. About 75% or 70% of my leadership team has spent more than 8 years with me. So I know these people really well. Like they got married at the company, they have kids at the company. I don't know what they'll do next, but and so I know them. I think one of the key things about building long-term enterprises is to essentially have your set of people. Not necessarily whether good or bad people. It's just your set of people, especially in the leadership team, that you need to know the people and you need to stay with them for a very long period of time. So therefore, when we thought about this long time back, and we made mistakes ahead of that, by the way, was to say we should create an environment where if I would love to be there, then I would imagine you would also love to be there. What is that environment? The environment required for us to essentially care and trust our people disproportionately. And so that's what we do. We truly care for our people. And I don't mean those in words, but I actually think we genuinely care. And I blindly trust my team. We don't have many things anymore. I know many other companies also don't have it. For example, we don't have any travel policy. We don't have any leave policy. We don't have, people generally should get paid 100% bonuses because people don't work for money and stuff like that. All of those theses we believe in, we live by them. At times they come and bite you in pockets because some people take advantage of it. But in general, about 90% of the time you have gained from these kind of environments. So I think we try to create an environment and then leave it to the rest for people to just stay around and then, do their best work.
I want to also ask you this, is that you started in 2008 and we are in 2024, and you would have seen, we have witnessed the building of the new digital economy, startups, entrepreneurship. In the last few years, and it's a very rhetoric question, but the definition of success is that hum unicorn bana liye hain, and we are like $1 billion valuation. There's been a lot of celebration and hero worshipping of entrepreneurs who got that. You've been through your journey. You have 2 unicorns, InMobi and Glance, both. But you've also seen that journey, the curve. You've also got a lot of attention, and in between you hadn't got also attention. What would you like to tell all the entrepreneurs in the room when you do a journey from 2008 to now?
Look, I think you cannot be more... It's a humbling process. I'm saying to the people who are going through it anyway, so it's not easy. But I think there cannot be a more rewarding thing to do than to try and create some things. I think India is special. A few days ago, I asked my daughter did a survey in her class to say, hey, what do you want to do? In her own class, she is in high school. 65% of the class said, we want to start our own company. And that was not clearly the case when I was in high school. Nobody wanted to start a company. Nobody wanted to do this. There was a survey done for children, I shouldn't call them children, for people under 25. 35% of them said they want to start a company. In reality, the successful number of people who have started a company is less than 500.
Less than 500.
Less than 500. There are only 500 companies that have been started in the last 15 years that have been successful. So it's not as if the success rate is like 80%. The success rate is like 0.1%. So what does that tell you? A success rate of 0.1%. But a disproportionate portion of the population saying we want to go for it. Not just this, by the way. The population is also, which is now sitting out in the retail stock market, is saying, I want to participate in this revolution of our country, and therefore I will make the stock market go berserk. Hope is what entrepreneurship is all about. Hope is what these 500 people have created and shown to the country to say, if I can do it as a middle-class person coming from Uttar Pradesh, then you can also do it. And I think that hope is what's driving our country to a level that it will rise up and create things that the world has never seen before. The macro also is in our favor. So thank God and save the world, because we are coming for it.
And that brings me to the question. You said that the stock market is also today valuing, and we've seen the companies, be it Zomato, Ola Electric, so many companies in the last 2.5 years that we've seen go for IPO. So my regular question to you, which I'm asking entrepreneurs, is when are you looking at filing?
I'm assuming you're also on the board of Ola Electric. So there are things that you cannot say, and there are things that you can say. So yeah, soon. But I will tell you one thing. I think the beauty of our stock market is not because it is a very big macro trend that we are seeing in this country, which is, if you think about the US stock market, the US stock market is about $50 trillion. 60% of that stock market is tech. Indian stock market is about maybe $5 to $6 trillion, something in that range, 5 to 6. Only 3 to 4%, maybe 5% is tech. So there are two things that are going to happen. One, the stock market will go from whatever 5-6 trillion to about 15-20 trillion. But the more importantly, the tech component of that will go from 3-5% to close to about 30-35%. So you're effectively looking at a disproportionate scaling in the stock market because of the tech stocks. Now, why is that exciting or important? Is because, of course, tech has ability to create disproportionate value much faster, but also because the Indian retail investor who is sitting out there looking at these articles that you guys write about all the startups to say they're creating something interesting, they want to participate in that. And so therefore, what you see here is a generation of the next 20 years of people trying to participate in this massive journey of value creation. And if you are somebody who is in India today for the next 20 years, there cannot, like every large economy in the world has gone through these 20-year cycles of growth that are unparalleled. So if you're in a good position today of participating in this economy, trust me, for the next 20 years, nobody's coming close to us. You've had the likes of Germany go through this in the 40s. You had US go through it in the 50s. You have had the Japanese go through it in the 70s to the 90s. You had the Chinese go through it. Well, it's our time.
Naveen, I want to ask you, you have so many users, like 400 million users. You know all the advertising companies in the world. And you have the experience and why don't you do something to engage? Like, why don't you create an accelerator incubator inside InMobi Glance for startups?
The highest value creation are done by companies or systems where the system in itself understands how to create new things. That's the highest level of value creation one can do. So, for example, we created Glance. We created inside InMobi. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. Not a bad outcome for a few years of effort. We have many such things that are happening because we fundamentally believe that if you know how to understand, there are two theories in the world, right? One is the theory of saying, okay, single file, one element, and we go do this. That's a Western theory. Unfortunately, we've all read them. So we all like to believe single file and we'll do this. The more Asian strategy around this is to say there is dearth of talent and capital, the larger scheme of things. And so therefore you can actually have a multi-fang strategy on doing, if you can do 2, then why not 3 and why not 4 and why not 5? So therefore I actually think in markets like India, successful companies will become digital conglomerates. They will have ability to create disproportionate outcomes much faster than others. So what you would see over the next 20 years are two mega strategies. One is companies who have spent the last 10-15 years leverage the advantage of the Indian ecosystem and whatnot to create more and more companies within their portfolio. Second is, of course, you would see a lot of new startups come up because that's a pretty obvious outcome for all of these things, but we are certainly going for the first one. So therefore, we don't have an accelerator because we ourselves are an accelerator.
Yeah, and I want to ask you again on behalf of most people here, is that are you also investing in startups?
No, I stopped.
Why?
Two reasons. One, it was becoming very hard to provide true value. You would give the money and then not be useful at all. And then I would forget which ones I invested in also. So I stopped kind of doing that.
Yeah, you thought Kunal Shah's number, I think it's some 350 or some 550 startup.
Every time I catch up with him, I was like, how do you do this?
Yeah.
He said, I don't know where all I've invested. But he's amazing at it. Like, he can pull it off. I can't, I think. The second reason I don't do it is because I also think when you make an investment, you are making a commitment to the entrepreneur about something, and it should not be taken lightly. And so I don't. If I can't make the commitment whole, then I don't want to do it.
Personalization of apps, services typically happens on the back of the harvesting the user's data. Data is king has been a mantra for all organizations. In the last few years, we've seen that companies have neither been transparent nor been responsible with users' data. As you envision building a personal internet, as you called it, where do you prioritize the security and privacy of users' data? And more importantly, how much time do you or your direct report or staff spend on this to ensure that you all can deliver an experience that is also not going to sell the user data down the stream?
Brilliant question. I'll give you a very simple answer to this. I think what we are really trying to say is, if you're going to create a personal internet, you might as well keep the data on the phone and not even take it out of the phone anymore. So what we have built as a technology is to essentially make sure that your data does not leave your phone and it stays there. What we will send over is the models that are trained overall. We send the models into this and not your data out. And therefore, fundamentally, the architecture of the privacy modulation has actually changed in general, because there is no way one can actually safeguard your data if you keep taking it out. So our approach is to not even take it out anymore.
It's good to see that you have your team, on an average 7 to 8 years in your team. So one quick question about that is, how did you manage? Because if someone as a aging, creating that innovation and the juice of, startup culture, all those things, it's becoming a challenge. Me being an entrepreneur where a few of my teammates or colleagues with me has been with me, but I'm not able to motivate them to a certain extent to go to the next level, though they are with me for 8 to 10 years. So how did you do it? Is there any secret sauce?
I don't know what the secret sauce probably is, but I think they're staying because they like to play the game at its peak also. By the way, it's not been that we've not had our share of downturns. It is in those downturns when I actually realized that I had the least attrition, least people left. And I was amazed at it, because I had to go to them and say, we are getting screwed. And they all stood up and said, we will save you. And I was like, I think they're just, saying it, but they will not save me. But they did. So the way I would translate this is, you got to keep people not because they're only more they're there because they truly trusted you and were with you at the time when you needed them. Second, you need the trust circle around you. Third, everybody is very driven in general. They all want to create. Unlike true sports, startup entrepreneurship is not a thing that you really get tired by. If you genuinely get fueled by the desire of creation, then it's a drug that you cannot get off. That's what I find in the company. I know I've had people who joined me in their 20s and now in their 40s. They are even more driven than they were maybe 10 years ago. So I think I'm doing something right.
Naveen, morning. So one of those guys who
How are you?
20s and then now in 40s. So I've seen InMobi grow. So one quick question for you.
He's one of my earliest people, by the way.
One quick question. I think you've been humble enough not to speak a lot about it, that InMobi is the first company where we built from India for the world. And all through, the competition has not been normal, where, we fought and you still continue to fight Googles and Facebooks of the world. And the number of startups that have come out of InMobi, people who have not left for other jobs, including me, we have gone out for startups, and then probably the higher 2-digit numbers. If there are two things that you would say that young entrepreneurs need to keep in mind throughout, possibly that would benefit the group, that would be wonderful to hear from.
Thank you, Ravikant. Firstly, I think we have roughly about 75 companies, or maybe 80 companies that have come out of InMobi.
Wow. That is amazing.
I lose track of them, but I bump into these people at times, and then they we're doing this and we're doing that. And it's so good to see it, by the way. It's not even funny. And their cohort has done really well, the very early cohort of people. Some of them have built and sold, so I'm like, okay, can you give me some money? I've not sold a company yet. But that apart, I think in order, few things I would say is one, look, entrepreneurship is hard. It's very hard. So if it's hard and you're going to work 18, 19 hours a day, then you might as well work on something that is going to be really big. There is no point in working very hard and taking the risk and then do something small. Like that one should not do, because then that's a colossal waste of your own time and effort. And therefore one should really go for something very big, very massive, that if you look by the probability of success between something really big and something slightly lesser big and something small is not that different. In fact, if you go for something really big, your probability might actually be higher because not many are going for it. So I think one I would say is go for something ultra big, really hard, that if you succeed, you can be very, very, very happy about. So that I would say is one. Second, I think is perseverance. Just the ability to stay at it. There is no timeline to success. If many people look at somebody else and say, oh, she kind of got success in 2 years and I've been at it for 4, so I think I'm not really doing well. Of course, that's a very obvious thing to see, but I think everyone's journey is their own journey. But if you can stay at it, I think the issue many a times is people move away from what they're really trying to do and get distracted, disheartened, whatever you want to call it. Just stay at it. And then, it'll be, if you just stay at it, the probabilities come in your favor. So you should be fine.
I do 2 things currently. I take classes for CA students, and I also run a mental health company called the Mind and Company. So most people tell me, well, they focus only on one thing. You can't ride 2 horses at the same time. I mean, you're someone who built 2 unicorns. Want to hear from you, how do you manage to, or is it okay to do 2 things at the same time?
Till you're successful in the second one, everybody came and told me the same thing. That focus on the one thing that you have, and the second thing you'll not be able to be successful. Now when I've done 2, then people come and say the exactly different thing. Just say, given that you've done 2, why aren't you doing the third one? So I have no idea how to answer that question for you, because look, it is up to you, man. If you think you can pull it off, let's just be at it and pull it off. Like listening to people's advice is probably the last thing you should do. So the only advice I will tell you, maybe I should stop, but the only advice I'll tell you is not to listen to other people's advice, and you can also ignore this one. But up to you.
I'm confident of the 2 things I'm doing. Thank you.
Go for it.
With the emergence of consumers being directly compensated for their own data internationally, how do you see this changing, the landscape of mobile advertising?
Well, I think there are 2 independent questions. I think the data, consumers getting more in control of their data is the right thing to do. It should happen. Consumers then coming out and saying, in order for me to access something where what I'm willing to trade is my data, if you're not willing to trade your data for free access to content because the advertising can then run, you should pay for it. That choice has to be made clear in people's head. What is happening, we're going through this transition where people want free stuff but also not want to trade anything for it. I think it's a very fair trade conversation between consumers and enterprises to say, hey, I'm willing to give you something for free. What are you willing to give me in return? If you don't want to give anything in return, please pay. And I think when that debate is clear in people's head, I think we'll all have a sorted world, which may be a few years, out there. Because I think that in reality, it's only like 2-3% of the people that have truly understood that their data is going somewhere. In reality, while we may stand up and protest against it, everybody very gladly gives away the data in the moment when they have to do something themselves.
Yeah, hi. My name is Archana. I come from an EV industry startup, basically from Kerala, Cochin.
From which industry?
EV, electrical vehicle.
Oh, electrical.
We are CPUs, charge point operators. So I would like to have a general question for all the entrepreneurs over here or the startup companies. So you've built an empire for yourself. So what is the best and the worst advice you have received while building the empire?
Empire.
I mean, you have a very big industry, like huge business.
So you answer empire builder.
The worst advice I've gotten?
And the best.
The worst advice I've gotten is to say I should give up. No, that they asked me to give up. They asked me to give up, to say you will fail in it. So there was a point of time when I was like, people would sit me down to say shut glance. Maybe they were right, because people tend to look at things in the moment. At that moment, if you look backward in the rear view, you can make that correct advice. I've been given, I'll tell you one, yeah.
This is such a beautiful answer, actually. Yeah.
I'll tell you a story which pained me. So this is 2006 and 2007. I was doing my first startup. Nobody knows about it because it never came out or nothing. But it was effectively building what's today is WhatsApp calling. Okay. And I built it. And I was testing it on the streets of San Francisco. My team would be in Bangalore. I would make phone calls and we would talk. It would be not good and then be good, be improving and whatnot. And then I went to the venture capitalist and said, look, I've built a voice over IP calling mechanism that I think can change the way the phone industry is set up and whatnot. And, I went to 10 to 15 of them. 10 to 15 of them said, what a bullshit idea. This would never work. The carrier industry would kill you. And I listened to them. And I shut the company. And therefore, I think the advice I would give you is the advice that I gave somebody else earlier, is not to listen to other people's viewpoint. If you think you have a conviction onto something, then you got to stay at it. And that's the worst advice that I would get, where people are questioning my conviction. But I don't think it's an advice which is bad. I think it's a perspective that if you entertain, then that's bad. So I don't know whether the advice is bad or good. I think it's whether you take them or not. If you take them and, it's your decision. So why blame the advice guy? That's his job, to give you an advice. Let's not blame the advice guy. Let's blame ourselves to say whether we take something on or not.
In India, we all specialize in giving advice.
That is correct.
And not listening, maybe, but giving to hum sab karte hain. Yes, so this was a phenomenal answer. Naveen, that's how and that's why we respect you, the journey, and we all can say we have a glance in India and we have InMobi from India. So very, very proud of you. Thank you so much. And guys, let's give a standing ovation to Naveen Tiwari.